Welcome back everyone. Today is round 8 of the European Chess Championship, and today I have a bit more time. It's only 2 p.m. now, so I still have some time until the game starts. I'm playing against Bournel Antoine today, who is from France and also my age. And he has a rating of 2400, I think. International master, so today I have the black pieces. Still need to try to win the game today if I wanna still have some chances to qualify for the World Cup. Yeah, I'm gonna need, wait, how many more games are there? I think 4 more games. So yeah, if I want some chances, I would probably need like 3.5 out of 4 or something crazy like that. But yeah, I try not to think about it that much. Just play the game as it is. And yeah, I still have some preparation to do. Most likely is gonna go d4, and yeah, I'm gonna play some pretty slow system, but most likely some cow spot structure would come there. But let's see how it goes. And yeah, I wanted to tell actually one funny story what happened yesterday during the round in the playing hall. After like 10, 15, 20 minutes of play, all of a sudden like the lights went out in the whole playing hall for, it wasn't that long, maybe like 20, 30 seconds. But it was just funny, like everyone was laughing the whole, like there were just no lights. Yeah, you couldn't see anything. So yeah, that was that was it. But I just imagined like what would happen if this happens like in a time trouble stage, if you have just seconds on your clock and all of a sudden all of the light goes out in the playing hall. But yeah, if you know some stories like this, guys, post them in the comments. I would be curious to hear them. Like sometimes things like this do happen in the playing hall, and some disturbances are are often there. But anyway, yeah, round is starting in about an hour, and I'll finish up my preparations, and I will see you after the game. So see you in the recap. Welcome back, guys, to the recap of round number 8, and I won my game, which I am very happy about, and in fact it was actually not such a bad game. So yeah, I'm happy about it, and let's jump right in. My opponent went knight f3. I replied with knight f6, c4, e6, knight c3, d5. I was expecting him to go to this position, but with d4 now, he did play e3, but usually he went for this classical queen's gambit here. The move order here for me doesn't really matter, but actually, in fact, he mostly started with d4, and then we reached this position right here with this move order, or with some other move orders. So I was mostly preparing for this position, but then he surprised me by going e3 here, which is a sideline I play myself as white. I play myself as well with white pieces, and white in general wants to aim for this fianchetto with b3 and bishop b2. I had many games here from the white side as well recently, and I had this one idea which I only played in one online game so far with the black pieces, which is to go bishop d6, and after b3 castle bishop b2, now knight c6, which is still quite rare, but unluckily for me, my opponent saw that. I think it was Pragnananda who played it 2 days ago in the Tata Steel tournament. And his opponent, I'm not sure who played it. Maybe Keimer was white. I'm not exactly sure anymore. But his opponent also went a3, and my opponent saw that game, so he knew this move, which is the best move. But even after this, it is objectively okay for black. Let me just briefly go through the variations here. Knight c6 does look a bit strange. White's point is if black goes for b6, then white usually wants to take on d5, and then this Karlspad structure here is usually a bit more pleasant for white, since this move b6 kind of weakens everything here on the queen side. White doesn't want to take here right away, let's say here, this structure, because if there's no b6 yet, then black can just go c6 and then move out the bishop, and the pawn on c6 will be totally fine. With the pawn already on b6, then the pawn on c6 would be a big, quite a weakness. For example, now if this is like a typical plan for white, knight e2 and then knight g3, and now if black wants to go c6, the pawn is here, yeah, can often be targeted. So this is why white usually waits here for black to play b6 and only then to take on d5. And yeah, these positions I like to play with white myself, so I didn't want to go here today. Black could also go something like c6 here, also very logical, most likely transposing to some sort of Slav with knight bd7 next. And yeah, Black has many different options. c5 immediately, one of them also a6 is also one idea to prepare d takes c4 followed by b5. So yeah, many options here, but I thought I would give this idea a shot, and yeah, wasn't expecting my opponent to be familiar with it. But he went a3, which is already, I mean, it does look a bit strange. a3 is kind of a mysterious move. Black's point with knight c6 is if white goes I think the most logical move here is d4. Then black wants to take d takes c4, and however white recaptures, then e5. Black gets the central break and equalizes basically on the spot. Same with b takes c4. I think also e5 is pretty good here for black when white is still even a bit underdeveloped and black has no problem. Something like bishop e2. Maybe I will take on d4 and then bishop f5, something like this. Looks very solid for black. And a3 is, yeah, hard to explain, I would say. I think the main reason is bishop e2 might also look logical, but now after d takes c4, white actually wants to recapture with the bishop, but now he lost one tempo. And a3 is anyway somewhat of a logical move. And I played d4 now, which is a pawn sacrifice, which I still knew was the move here. But now if we compare the variations, if I would take now on c4 after bishop takes c4, now white has this extra a3 move, which is actually very useful, since now after e5 white has queen c2, and now there is no knight b4. And white has some initiative here with some ideas with knight g5, some attack on h7. So yeah, this is a bit dangerous for black. I went d4. Maybe black also has some moves like a6 or rook e8. They also both looked pretty playable to me during the game, but I knew that d4 is the correct move. And yeah, it is a pawn sacrifice. He took with the knight, which is the good way to recapture. If e takes d4, also e5. And if d5, then knight d4, black gets very active play and great compensation for the pawn. And for just, let's say he takes here, usually black will, I assume, take back with the knight. And yeah, this is like the typical position which can come. And black just has like long-term compensation. The white pawn on d2 is not really a good extra pawn. The bishop always is a nice square on d4. And yeah, white's pieces are all somewhat passive. So my opponent recaptured with the knight, and after knight takes d4, e takes d4, now I spent a little bit of time and went c6, not being sure what was the move here. It turns out that actually many moves are possible for black. I was considering c6 and e5. What I wasn't sure about, if I go e5 right away, then if he goes d5 and after c6, now he can take on c6, and I thought this also should be enough compensation for me, but I wasn't that sure here. And if I go c6 right away, now let's say white goes bishop e2, now after e5, d5, now I get to take, and some position like this, I thought I'm very comfortable here, since now white also has the double pawns, and probably sooner or later I will even win back the pawn on d5. So that was the idea. We're going c6 first, and he went queen f3. Just to point out, probably both moves are around same of the evaluation, c6 and e5, but I actually just checked and c6 was still in the file which I where I analyzed it, but it was already a couple of weeks or months ago that I checked it, so I wasn't that familiar with the variation anymore. I went c6, he played queen f3, and here I was actually very worried about the move knight e2, just trying to stop my idea with e5, and I couldn't really figure out how to handle the position. My first instinct was rook e8, but now f4, and again I couldn't see how to make things work, because f4, e5 doesn't work now anymore, and if white gets enough time to finish his development with g3, bishop g2, short castle, he will just be a pawn up basically. So I started calculating here a little bit, but really couldn't figure it out. Luckily my opponent didn't go there, but it does turn out that even here black has sufficient compensation with the idea b6, g3, and now c5, and after bishop b7, just rook b8. And whenever white takes on c5, then b takes c5. This is the important idea which I missed. Now the b file will open up, and yeah, black can target the pawn on b3, which is still around equal this position, so black has sufficient compensation. Yeah, the only important thing is not to take with the bishop, because now after d4, white would just be a clean pawn up. He doesn't have the double pawn anymore, so yeah, black doesn't want that. But anyway, he went queen f3 with the point that after e5 he has knight e4. So now I have to trade on e4. Otherwise, if I take here, he will force to trade queens, and then the pawn on d4 is just hanging. So I took on e4, queen takes e4, again f5, very logical. I played pretty fast here in the opening stage. Generally, my time management was very good today, so I'm quite happy about that. So yeah, that seemed all very logical, just gaining a tempo on white's queen. He went to d3, also logical because now after he wants to recapture with the queen after e takes d4. I still captured on d4 with the pawn, which is totally okay. e4 is the other idea for black, but here I thought he's somewhat safe. Both moves queen c3 or queen c2. I felt like I should have enough compensation here as well. But yeah, I felt like white is somewhat safe. He can maybe even castle long, and at some point he might play d3, exchanging his double pawn. And yeah, if I'm not careful enough, white will just be a pawn up long term. So yeah, I wanted to play more straightforward with e takes d4, since now the king on e1 is actually in some trouble, and white has to take on d4, otherwise I will get to fix the pawn on d4 with c5. So he took with the queen, rook e8 check, bishop e2, and here I played queen c7. The idea being I'm just protecting g7, and white still cannot castle because of this annoying pin here. Also, I have some bishop e5 ideas in some cases. So here he went king f1, which is still very logical. Just stepping out of this pin and being ready to move the bishop. Of course, he would prefer to castle, but this just doesn't work here because, always the bishop on e2 will be hanging. So king f1, bishop e5, and now he has to go queen e3, otherwise I will get to take the bishop on b2. After queen e3 I cannot take because there is queen takes e8 with checkmate. And here my whole idea was to go f4, and here I was already calculating from here actually. I was calculating a couple of moves ahead. After queen e3, f4, again, this is all forced. He has to take on e5, rook takes e5, and now queen takes f4. And now I'm already 2 pawns down. But after queen e7, this is like the move I had to foresee. It turns out that white has to be very careful here because the king on f1 is still in a lot of danger, and white's pieces are very badly coordinated. So I do have the initiative here. Position is still objectively balanced, but from a practical point of view, it seemed very hard to defend for the white pieces. It turns out that queen takes f4 is actually not the best move. Queen c3 is much better because on f4 the queen will actually be in some line of fire. Also the f file will open up. Queen c3 would be better when I intended bishop f5, and after d4 rook e7 when I still have more or less enough compensation. Rook d8 will come next, and he still needs to figure out what to do with the king. After bishop f3, rook d8, I think I stopped calculating here. Computer does give some advantage with the move g4, which I did not see at all. But yeah, from a practical standpoint, still looks like white has some difficult questions to answer here. But he took on f4, and after queen e7, he played bishop f3. Also, bishop d3 would be an idea, but the bishop is also somehow like hanging in the air here. I intended to go bishop d7 when rook f8 will come, and yeah, also looks pretty dangerous for white. He went bishop f3, now queen d6, I think very strong. The idea is just, or the threat is rook e1 with a discovered attack on the queen, and now he has to move the queen. So queen d6, this is what he totally missed, and actually a nice move. I think we both, or at least he saw bishop f5. He told me, but after h4 now, this is his white's main idea, to have king g1 and king h2. If rook f8 now, which seems logical, I think there was just queen g3 here, moving away the queen, and then king g1, followed by king h2 will come, but I didn't really see the compensation from me. But after queen d6, he has to either move the queen or block the e-file, and he chose the latter. He went bishop e4, which is already a big mistake. Queen g3 is one of the two good moves, queen g3 or bishop e2, but queen g3 on the board looked very dangerous. I intended queen d4, and after rook d1, just bishop f5, and practically, I mean, I thought I'm winning here basically, but apparently it's somehow still equal. The king is just super weak on f1. The rook also doesn't have any squares. I'm threatening bishop c2. So this looked very dangerous over the board. What I did expect more was bishop e2, just to block the e-file. But also here, I can either repeat moves with queen e7 and queen d6 back, but I think I could play on with, what was it? I think there was some other ideas. I think I thought about, was g5 maybe? I'm not sure here. But I think there were some other ideas here to play on, and at least I would have a repetition here. But I'm not exactly sure what I intended here. I think I had also g5 in mind in some cases, but maybe it was not here. Yeah, maybe I might had to go for the repetition. Also c5 was one idea, just to stop d4. This was also one idea which might be something to consider here. But anyway, he went bishop e4, which is a big mistake, and now I have bishop f5, which was a strong idea. And now after bishop takes f5, rook e1, and I'm winning the queen. But still, it's not so easy because he has rook and bishop and 2 pawns for the queen. So yeah, this was still not so easy to convert. He went bishop e6 check, king h8, and rook e3, also very logical, defending the pawn on d2, and making himself ready for king e2, and then to activate the rook on h1. I went rook e8 simply with the point to avoid king e2, since now rook e6 works and I'm winning a lot of material. But rook e8 was a bit inaccurate. I should go... what was it here? Was it rook? I think rook f8 right away was a good move. Provoking f3, and only now to go rook e8, because now in the same variation the pawn will be misplaced on f3, in the same variation than what happened in the game. I went rook e8 first, and after g3 now queen d6, and now after bishop g4, now imagine the same variation with the pawn on f3. Now after rook e3, fe3, the second rank would be cleared, and white would have a much worse version. So I went for this anyway, queen d6, bishop d4, rook e3, d takes e3, and now queen takes a3. I also considered queen d3 here, but after king g2, queen takes b3, rook d1, white gets a lot of active play here, and also these pawns can be somewhat dangerous. So I took on a3, bishop d1. He has to defend the pawn like this now. If king g2 now I have a much better version because I am a tempo up to the line compared to before, and here I could just do something like g6 probably, and looks winning to me. So he defended the pawn with bishop d1, queen b2, h4, queen d2, king g2, queen d3. This was just the idea to centralize the queen on the square. He went h5, and here I made a big mistake by going h6, which is just somewhat of a time waste. I should just go king g8 instead. And I underestimated his active play here. I just wanted to make some luft for the king, but yeah, king g8 would have been much more logical. And after h6, he went bishop g4, and all of a sudden he did get some active play. King g8, rook d1, queen takes b3, rook d8 check, king f7, but here he made the final blunder with rook d7 check. The way to hold the game, or at least to fight for equality, was bishop f5. When white is preparing e4, e5, e6, and all of a sudden it's actually not so easy for black to win. Even black has to be careful if the pawn reaches. The pawn is quite fast here, so yeah, this was the way to defend from my opponent. But he went rook d7 check, and after king e8, rook g7, a5, now my pawn is just very, very fast, and he's not in time to create any counterplay. He was also in a lot of time trouble. G4, a3, g5, a2, and here I was in time to promote. If white had one tempo more, then he would already checkmate me here, but now after h7 I can always take on g7. So he played rook g6, and after rook d1 he played bishop g4, and then he resigned because there are numerous ways to win the game. Maybe there is some checkmate. I can also pick up the pawn on c4. 2 queens should be enough to win the game here overall. So yeah, I'm just happy to win the game. I'm also very happy about my time management. This was something that went really well today. I need to keep that in mind for the last games. And yeah, other than that, I'm happy how it went. And yeah, thank you guys for watching today's recap. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Other than that, I will see you tomorrow. Take care, guys.